history is in the context of the media. You see, just as much of truth that a historian tells, that is precisely the truth that a person from the media tells. We are very selective. Any historian who says that he has painted a complete picture is obviously lying. Any journalist who says that he has painted a complete picture is also obviously lying. It's all about being selective. I've taught for 40 years, and one lesson I always teach my students is that a historian at best is like a photographer. Now, this gentleman taking a photograph of me here could have left me in the frame, kept me in the frame, could have pretended that this audience was 1,000, that this audience is 50. It's all a matter of perception. History is a matter of perception. So, but the role of the media is critical, because I have worked on the partition. My first book, which was published both in Pakistan and in India, I studied partition from the views of the media. I consulted around 36 newspapers across the world, all languages. And what I learned then was that the media has a different story to tell. It is a story that is written in the emotion of the moment. It is a story, a letter to the editor published in a newspaper by an innocent man living in some remote kasbah, small town. Means it is an unadulterated version. Normally what we do in history writing, we go to files, we go to official records, party reports, and so on and so forth. What happens is that these files, when a file goes to the National Archives or any archives, it is something which is edited at different levels. The version that goes, the version that we treat as history, is actually an edited version of history. The role of the media is that is probably, and I would, you see, today's time I would completely deny that. Today's news, obviously, you have your sub-editors, your desk editors, your editors, a lot of chain of people who are looking into your writings. But at one time it was not the case. So history writing underwent a dramatic churn. I started teaching at the age of 21 in 1977. After leaving a job in the Indian Police Service, I joined as a young lecturer at 21 years of age. I had studied authors like R.C. Majumdar, Jadunath Sarkar, Nilkant Shastri, R.K. Mukherjee, Raghuveer Singh, and so on. This is early 70s. Then what happened? By the time I started teaching, I came into 23, 24 years of age, when I was 5, 6 years into service, we had a complete new set of writings. These writings became essential reading. So, R.C. Majumdar was replaced by a colleague from JNU. Satish Chatterjee came into place for another one. So you had 2, 3 universities, very centric universities, that did the history writing for this nation for the long, long years to come. I was telling the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal University this morning, the narrative was so dramatic. If you wanted to clear the civil service, you had to read a particular author. Because that author was sending the papers, that author was sending the narrative, that author was doing the moderation, that author was doing the examination. So you had a whole generation of civil servants who would have read only a handful of authors. So this is, you see, I am pointing this out of context to tell you what happens when a narrative goes wrong. The exhibition that I took over as chairman ICHR on the 5th of January this year. And from my lifelong experience, the exhibition that you see is not a normal exhibition, it is a dramatic exhibition. We have changed the narrative. I don't believe in the word of changing the narrative. We are only filling the gaps. It is not for a historian. You see, as I said, when something is a matter of perception, you don't have to see, I can be right, you can also be right. If only a fool would say that this author is a very eminent name, but that is again a matter of perception. For this country, for over and over, when I talk of mainstream narrative, I am talking about the 40 lakh students who study in colleges, of the schools, colleges, universities, essential reading lists, examination systems. You will not clear an examination system until you read ABC author. So the question is telling the truth. This exhibition tells you the truth that the freedom movement was a story which had started almost 100 years before what you have been taught. जो आपको बताया गया आपके स्कूल्स कॉलेजेस में
कि आज़ादी की लड़ाई तो 20वीं शताब्दी के प्रारंभिक शताब्दी में ये गलत है, क्योंकि हमने इस एग्जीबिशन के माध्यम से ये दिखाया है कि ये तो आप देखिए यंगस्टर्स अर्ली 19th सेंचुरी में 15 साल के लड़के, आशीचार की टीम ने 12,500 मार्टियर्स के नाम इकट्ठा किए हैं, जिनको फांसी दी गई, जिनको गोली मारी गई। 160 बच्चे ऐसे हैं जिनकी उम्र 20 साल से कम है। अब अभिनव भारत का ओथ पढ़िए जाकर 1904 में अभिनव भारत में क्या कहा जा रहा है कि यू हैव टू गिव योर लाइफ फॉर द नेशन। दिस इज द स्टोरी ऑफ द फ्रीडम मूवमेंट, दिस इज द स्टोरी ऑफ। इसके बाद एक अगली एग्जीबिशन ऐसी था रेवोल्यूशनरीज पर रहा। अब देश को बताएंगे कि आजादी की लड़ाई 20वीं शताब्दी की लड़ाई नहीं है, ये तो 200 साल की लड़ाई है। You see, now most of you will go to the press. The press has played a vital role. मुझे जब कॉन्टैक्ट किया गया, मैं उन दिनों में यूएस में था अभी, I was very happy to see the title of this paper, of this conference. Press and freedom movement. You see, you have to understand as young journalists, आप लोग मिक्स अलग अलग जगह जाएंगे, काम करेंगे। मीडिया का बहुत एक सिग्निफिकेंट रोल रहा है इस संघर्ष में। मीडिया हैज प्लेड अ वेरी क्रिटिकल रोल व्हिच हैज नॉट बीन गिवन इट्स प्लेस। फॉर एग्जांपल, द एंटायर रेवोल्यूशनरी मूवमेंट, द मूवमेंट ऑफ सीक्रेट सोसाइटीज, द मूवमेंट ऑफ प्रिस्क्राइब्ड लिटरेचर। अगली एग्जीबिशन में हम प्रिस्क्राइब्ड लिटरेचर और प्रिस्क्राइब्ड प्रेस, जिन प्रेस वालों को सजाएं मिली, जिनकी धन दौलत को कुर्की की गई, जिनको अरेस्ट किया गया, उनकी कहानी हम आपको बताएंगे 3-4 माह के अंदर इस आजादी की लड़ाई में। नाउ फॉर एग्जांपल, श्री अरबिंदो के नाम से आप सब फेमिलियर है। मैं उनका बहुत बड़ा एडमायरर हूँ। आई रीड अ लॉट ऑफ व्हाट ही राइट्स, वर्चुअली एवरीथिंग दैट ही हैज एवर रिटन आई हैव रेड। वो प्रेस के महत्व को वो आप जानते हैं, वंदे मातरम के एडिटर थे, प्रथम एडिटर थे। उन्होंने एक जगह लिखा कि वंदे मातरम का क्या महत्व है। 1905 की ये बात है, आज से 115-20 साल पहले की बात है। आई एम कोटिंग, इट केम इनटू बीइंग इन आंसर टू एन इंपेरेटिव नीड एंड नॉट टू सैटिस्फाई एनी प्राइवेट और पर्सनल विल। अभी हिंदी में बताऊंगा। इट वाज बोर्न इन अ क्रिटिकल आवर ऑफ द होल नेशन and has a message to deliver which nothing on earth can prevent it from delivering. Note the word nothing on earth can prevent it from delivering. It has given expression to the will of the people. See, क्या कह रहे हैं यहाँ कि वंदे मातरम का जो जन्म हुआ इस क्रांतिकारी अखबार का, वो देश की आवश्यकता थी। ये कोई विम नहीं था किसी अमीर आदमी का, किसी इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट का कि अखबार बना दो और अपनी बात को प्रचलित कीजिए। ये देश की आवाज थी और वंदे मातरम ने कोशिश करी कि अपनी बात को वो सच कहे। और किसकी बात? अपनी बात का मतलब जनता की बात। तो ये मेरे हिसाब से मीडिया के रोल को श्री अरबिंदो की जो बात ये है, ये बहुत सुंदर ढंग से इसको कहती है। मैं थोड़ी सी ज़्यादा समय नहीं लूंगा, मुझे पता है समय की कमी है। कुछ न्यूज़पेपर्स के नाम आप लोगों ने सुने होंगे। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, यू मस्ट हैव हर्ड ऑफ नेम्स लाइक द बॉम्बे क्रॉनिकल, अमृता बाजार पत्रिका, पंजाबी, प्रताप, द ट्रिब्यून, द हिंदू, स्वदेशी मातरम। ये सब अखबार आप क्योंकि मीडिया से स्टूडेंट्स हमने सुना होगा। जो कहानियां आपने नहीं सुनी और जो ऐसे कॉन्फ्रेंसेस में आपका ध्यान रहना चाहिए। सी, मीडिया का रोल मैंने बताया कि ये देश बहुत बड़ा विशाल देश है और ये जानना जरूरी है कि माना कि 1900 में 19th सेंचुरी में शिक्षा का स्तर बहुत कम था, 1.5% से भी कम था, परंतु जो चीज अखबार में लिखी जाती थी उस अखबार का जब लिफाफा बन जाता था और वो लिफाफे में बन के 2 समोसे डलते थे और वो किसी पुराने बस स्टैंड पे गांव के अंदर जब लिफाफा वो पहुंचता था, वो भी मीडियम था। आज के भारत में ग्राम में पैदा हुआ हूं, ग्रामीण मूल रूप से, छोटे छोटे बस स्टैंड के पास जाइए आप देखिए। आज के भारत में भी जबकि सोशल मीडिया इतना पॉपुलर मीडियम है, व्हाटएवर इज रिटन, एक सामान्य व्यक्ति की उसको ये नहीं पता कि ये कहानी कैसे लिखी, क्यों लिखी, क्या इसके पीछे उसके लिए लिखा गया है, तो भैया ये तो सही रूप है, ये तो लिखा गया है, अखबार में आ गई है। ये महत्व था मीडिया का, अखबार में छपने का मतलब, तो ये 99% सच है। आम आदमी इस बात को उसी रूप से जानता है, समझता है, स्वीकार करता है। अब ये समय वो क्या है 19th सेंचुरी का। 1881 में केसरी आता है, लोकमान्य ने प्रकाशित किया, उसकी धारा देखिए किस रास्ते पर डाल रहा है। केसरी के बाद अनेक चेन आते हैं और देखिए कहां आ रहे हैं न्यूज़पेपर्स। ये रेवोल्यूशनरी एक्टिविटी को स्पॉन्सर कर रहे हैं। इसीलिए इनके टाइटल्स पर मत जाइए आप, इनकी लाइनों के बीच में हिस्ट्री में हम कहते हैं इट इज ऑलवेज गुड टू रीड बिटवीन द लाइन्स। जो काले अक्षरों में लिखा है तो हम सब जानते हैं, जो नहीं लिखा तो लिखा जाना चाहिए था या छूट गया है, वो एक शोध का कार्य होता है। अब मैं आपको 2-4 अखबारों के नाम बताऊंगा केवल आपकी रुचि पैदा करने के लिए। इसमें 1905 9 मई 1905। Take your mind back as a student, I always tell my students, float your mind back. They go to London 1905. 57 का दिवस है, 1857 मनाया जा रहा है। 5 लोग बैठकर 7 लोग बैठकर मिलते हैं कि एक अखबार छापना है। सांति वर्मा वहां बैठे हैं और इंडियन सोशियोलॉजिस्ट का जन्म होता है। इंडियन सोशियोलॉजिस्ट को लगेगा कोई समाज शास्त्र का है, बेसिकली इट वाज अ रेवोल्यूशनरी पीरियड, अंग्रेजों का मूर्ख बनाने के लिए। इंडियन सोशियोलॉजिस्ट में कौन लोग जुड़ते हैं, उनके नाम देखिए। भाई परमानंद, लाला हरदयाल, वीरेंद्रनाथ चट्टोपाध्याय, बीकाजी कामे जिसको मैडम काम आप लोग कहते हैं हिंदी, एंड ऑफ कोर्स मदनलाल ढींगरा, विनायक सावरकर। विनायक सावरकर पहले ही पत्रिका महाराष्ट्र में एडिट कर रहे हैं। तो ये अब इन लोगों के नाम देखिए, मेन स्ट्रीम नैरेटिव में आपको नाम नहीं मिलेंगे। ये 1905 की कहानी है। केसी मैंने बताया 1905 में भारत में वंदे मातरम की स्थापना हुई। कौन पहले एडिटर है? श्री अरविंदो। See, look at the narrative that is evolving, kind of people that are involved. क्या सोच लेकर ये लोग आ रहे हैं, इनको अगर आप पढ़ेंगे आपके रोंगटे खड़े हो जाएंगे। देन वंदे मातरम का दूसरा एडिशन आता है जिनीवा से। कहां भारत, कहां जिनीवा आता है 10 सितंबर 1909। ये वो समय है मदनलाल ढींगरा को फांसी दे दी गई है, सावरकर गिरफ्तार होने जा रहे हैं और कौन प्रकाशित कर रहा है? पेरिस में बैठी मैडम का वंदे मातरम प्रकाशित हो रहा है जिनीवा से। 1909 में 29 नवंबर को बर्लिन से एक अखबार आता है तलवार। नाम देखिए, तलवार। ये कोई आजकल के हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स या टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया नहीं है। ये 100, 200, 400 कॉपी छपी। इसी प्रयास देखिए इन व्यक्तियों का जिन्होंने बैठा, क्योंकि प्रोस्पेक्ट होने का देखा, अरेस्ट हो गए तो गए काम से। बर्लिन छपा, जिनीवा से छपा, क्योंकि जहां जहां अंग्रेजों को बोला जा रहा था वहां से ये प्रकाशित नहीं होते थे, चिपके सीक्रेट सोसाइटी में छपते थे। वैंकूवर से आता है फ्री हिंदुस्तान, आजाद हिंदुस्तान, सन 1908। सैन फ्रांसिस्को से आता है गदर। गदर इंग्लिश, उर्दू, गुजराती, हिंदी। लाला हरदयाल इसके पहले संपादक। कुल संख्या जो मैक्सिमम गदर की पब्लिकेशन है वो 3000 कॉपीज है। 3000 कॉपी के कुछ अंश हमें सियाम में भी मिले हैं, साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में, थाईलैंड में भी मिले हैं। Visualize the time. It is not like today you sit here and 14 hours you are in New York. आज उस जमाने में न्यूयॉर्क जाने का मतलब 6 महीने की यात्रा थी। So इस प्रकार की इन लोगों की सोच है और ये क्या कर रहे हैं? ये इसी देश, मेरे बात यही पे आता हूं इस बात पर कि ये बहुत विशाल देश है। प्रेस का सबसे बड़ा रोल इस सारे प्रयास में क्या था कि इस विशाल विस्तृत देश को, डाइवर्स कंट्री को, दिस ह्यूज डाइवर्स कंट्री, वी स्पीक सो मेनी लैंग्वेजेस, वी स्पीक सो मेनी ड्रेसेस, वी ईट सो मेनी काइंड्स ऑफ फूड्स, येट आई ऑलवेज से आई नेवर फील आउट ऑफ प्लेस इन दिस कंट्री, एनी पार्ट ऑफ दिस कंट्री। कुछ तो बात है। 1500 साल पहले शंकराचार्य कश्मीर से चले गए, श्रीनगर गए, नामदेव महाराष्ट्र से जाके गुरुबाणी में उन्होंने मंच लिखा। So this unique diversity, people tell me that diversity is a sign of, I said no, it is not weakness, it is strength. Innately, we are all uniquely united. united in some cultural manner, in some spiritual manner, the process of evolution. We are not a nation which was press a button. जैसे आप जाते हैं ना किसी दुकान पे बटन देगा, कोक की बोतल बाहर आ गई, दो बटन दबाए कुछ और बाहर. We are not an off the shelf country. You know, भारत की विचित्रता, भारत की विशेषता ये है कि ये evolve हुआ है. It has evolved as a nation. It is not an off-the-shelf product. We are not a nation which resulted from some treaty. 10 लोग बैठे ये लाइन बना दिए, इस जर्मनी नहीं हो गया, ये वेस्ट हो गया, ये यूक्रेन हो गया, ये सो एंड सो हो गया. भारत हजारों साल से लोग आए, खप गए, नहीं खपे, पर इस देश का मूल चरित्र चेंज नहीं हुआ. ये बात हर विद्यार्थी को, विशेषकर मीडिया के स्टूडेंट को ये जहन में बिठानी चाहिए. हम कोई भाषा बोलते हैं, कहीं रहते हैं, हम लोग एक देश रहे हैं और रहेंगे. तो मीडिया का रोल इसमें क्या है? मीडिया ने एक अहम रोल ये प्ले किया कि बंबई में चीज हो रही है, लाहौर में छप रही है. अगरतला में चीज हो रही है तो बंबई में छप रही है. विनायक सावरकर को जब गिरफ्तार कर बंबई लाया गया, जब बंदी बने, जब उनको भेजा गया कालापानी भेजने से पहले 50 सिपाही उनके साथ हैं. आईजी बॉम्बे उनको एस्कॉर्ट कर रहा है जहाज से. सजा देने से पहले जब वो स्वदेश पहुंचते हैं तो ट्रिब्यून, लाहौर का ट्रिब्यून, देखिए बंबई और लाहौर का अंतर कितना उस जमाने में. ट्रिब्यून एक लाइन सावरकर की गिरफ्तारी की, सावरकर की ट्रायल की. अगर आपने सावरकर की ट्रायल को पढ़ना है तो सावरकर के पेपर्स में ना जाके आप ट्रिब्यून की फाइल में चले जाइए. आपको सावरकर की संपूर्ण डिटेल आपको ट्रिब्यून देता है. और ट्रिब्यून कहाँ है? लाहौर में है. मैं आपको ये उदाहरण क्यों दे रहा हूं कि मीडिया का जो रोल है वो इस यूनिटी को दिखा रहा है. पंजाब के पठान भी इंटरेस्टेड है, पंजाब की जनता भी इंटरेस्टेड है कि कोई विनायक सावरकर है, कोई मराठी है, हमने नाम नहीं सुना, हमारी भाषा नहीं बोलता, पतला सा देखने में दुबला सा आदमी है, पर सारा पंजाब उसको जानता है. दिस इज द रोल ऑफ द मीडिया. जब सावरकर की डेथ हो गई 1966 में, again I'm bringing you back 56 years later. सावरकर की डेथ पर ट्रिब्यून एक ओबिचुरी कर रहा है. आप और हमारी पीढ़ी को बताया गया कि सावरकर तो इंटरनेशनल है, ये है, वो एबीसी है. मीडिया की ऑल्टरनेट हिस्ट्री है. मैं आपको ये बात क्यों बता रहा हूं? इशू सावरकर नहीं है, इशू मीडिया की अप्रोच है. मीडिया एक ऑल्टरनेट पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू का सोर्स है. हम लोग अपनी हिस्ट्री में कुछ भी करें, मीडिया सावरकर के बारे में क्या कह रहा है. और ट्रिब्यून कोई सामान्य व्यक्ति, सामान्य न्यूज़पेपर नहीं था उस जमाने में. गांधी जी नहीं कहते थे कि ट्रिब्यून देश का सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट ओपिनियन मेकिंग न्यूज़पेपर है. आज मैं शायद ये नहीं कहूंगा, बट एक जमाने में था. ट्रिब्यून क्या लिखता है ओबिचुरी में? दिस इज 28 February 1966, 56 years after Tribune had reported on the coming of Savarkar to India. I'm quoting, "The younger generation is not likely to know much about the heroic part played by Vinayak Savarkar in the early years of the century to make India free. He was a born revolutionary. It was such stuff that India's early leaders were made of. The present generation of Indians can hardly do better than cherish his memory." You see, the point is that history, as I said, we walk two paths. To my mind, the media, in all my studies, I've done a book on Kashmir recently. The book has got worldwide acclaim only because I've used sources which have not been used very effectively. These are local sources. छोटे-छोटे अखबार, छोटे-छोटे पुस्तकें, कश्मीर की घाटियों में पढ़ी, कश्मीर की लाइब्रेरी से मैंने खोजी. 10 साल, 7-8 साल लगे इस किताब को करने में. So मीडिया को उसमें बहुत अहम रोल है. तो ये आपको जो रिसर्च करेंगे, I'll close with this. See, the media has played a hugely important role in contemporary Indian history. It has played a hugely important role in the narrative of India's struggle for freedom, because it gives us an unadulterated, usually, I will not say dramatically or fully, but perhaps an unadulterated version. एक innocent version, एक सीधा संपर्क जो जमीन से जुड़ा हुआ वर्जन है, वो ज्यादातर हमें मीडिया के वर्जन में मिलता है. के context. Maybe these words I have taken a few minutes more than I should have taken. I am very grateful to the organizers for having invited me and you all for giving me a patient hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Thaur, for the most informative and thought-provoking address. Our next honorable speaker is Professor Santi Pandit. Professor Santi Pandit is the Vice Chancellor of the Jawaharlal Nehru University. She holds the distinction of being the first woman to grace this post. Born in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg in Russia, she did her undergraduation and post-graduation from the Presidency College of Chennai. She holds a doctorate in international politics from JNU. Professor Shanti did her postdoctorate in peace and conflict studies from the Uppsala University, Sweden. She is fluent and conversant in Telugu, Tamil, Marathi, Hindi, Sanskrit and English, and also understands Kannada, Malayalam and Konkani. I request Professor Shanti to kindly address the conference.
Respected Professor Rajendra Tanwarji, Chairman of the Indian Council for Historical Research, and I'm very happy that they have begun the process of filling the gaps in the history of the freedom movement as well as India. Professor Sanjay Dwivedi, the Director General of IIMC, Shri Ashish Goel, ADG, IIMC, and Shri Pramod Kumar, who is the seminar convener, and Dr. Sangeeta Pravendra, faculty, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. Ellarkum vanakkam, andarki namaskaram, sagadena namaskaram. These are the South Indian languages. I moved from the state of Tamil Nadu to Maharashtra after my marriage. And I agree with the Honorable Dr. Tanwarji that Indian media is one, though written in different languages. The earlier philosopher president of India, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, said Indian literature is one, though written in different languages. And I fully endorse that statement. And I also look at the Indian media from the media, what we have seen with the writing of Indian history or the freedom struggle is that they have inverted this epitaph of that facts are sacred, interpretation can be. Whereas, unfortunately, interpretation became sacred and facts varied. And that is why you have to do the filling up of the gaps. I agree with Dr. Tanwar that 1857 is seen by many writers of Indian history as India's first war of Indian independence. You also have a book by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar on this topic. Only one more idea I want to place on as a comment, that is, the history is written by the hunter. It is complete until the hunted writes its own history. So this is very important. Another, sir, as a woman, I want to say, history comes from his story. Her story also becomes very important. By saying that, speaking on the topic, I have been from the South. My father himself was a journalist who belonged to the Indian Information Service and closely worked with media and the freedom movement. So I would only say a few gaps that I see that is there, and I know it's a process, it's not a criticism. I would like all of you to think about these names. One is Potana, the poet of the people, Vemana, also the poet of the people, Kshetrajna, poet-composer. These people started as journalists and then became literateurs. Kandukuri Veereshalingam, the crusader on many fronts, who also was very much like Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar of the South. Many people don't know him. And then you had D.V. Krishna Shastri, a great poet and this of South. Dasarathi, Sri, the poet of protest. His poem, the Mahaprasthanam, is very, very famous. And then you have C. Narayan Reddy, who was a humanist. Then you have Bairagi, P.V. Rajamanna, another great journalist, and Kameshwar Rao, P. Padmaraju, Bucci Babu, and also a lady, Ilindra Saraswati Devi, C.R. Reddy, G.V. Sitapati, Tapi Dharmarao, Muttunuri Krishna Rao, V.R. Marla, a critic as a journalist. He was also the one who began Telugu newspapers like the Andhra Prabha and the Andhra Jyoti. And these are some of the names that I would like to place. And basically, I would also like, the Hindu was not the only journal that ran in the south. C. Rajagopalachari started what was called the Swatantra Times and Kalki in Tamil. Kasa Subbarao strode like a colossus in his lifetime as a patriotic journalist covering the birth pangs of a free nation, as a freedom fighter who braved lathi blows of the British in Chennai, and as a crusader against corruption and other evils that seeped into the system in the post-independence India. Intrepid, no-nonsense journalist who pursued his craft with passion, he dared to take the likes of Nehru and Rajagopalachari. Encapsulating the life and times of such a multifaceted personality is a challenging task to any biographer. He is one of the ones whom I think should be covered. And the other is C.Y. Chintamani, which I think most of you know because he worked in the north, so he might be. But Ishwar Dutt, M. Chalapati Rao, P. Rajeshwar Rao, Raghunath Iyer, Manjari S. Ishwaran, Subramanya Bharati, Bharati Dasan, and V. O. Chidambaram. These are a few names, there are much more, but I think we will have to cover it. Just a note before I complete, because I know we are running much behind time. The press in stable democracies like India is found to be very critical of and even hostile to the government established by law and enjoying the people's mandate for a certain number of years, 4 or 5, as the case may be. So we can see basically the fourth estate is seen as a conscience as well as a political adversary. But it is a position to replace the government, or it doesn't take the position to replace the government on its own. One issue I want to place before you today is, while you claim to be the fourth estate, you are also an industry. So what is the role that the media is today going to look at? I think there is a huge difference, what like our eminent historian Dr. Tandar said, that in those days people did it as a commitment, as a sacrifice. Today, owning a media house is a business. In South, every big politician runs a newspaper. Like in Maharashtra, we have all top political leaders having their own newspapers and TV channels. So, is it basically for agenda setting and gatekeeping? So these are issues that we will have to see the difference. And journalism should be a profession, and newspapers not commercial institutions but public concerns. Have we remained that is a question I want to place before this august body of young, very eminent faculty here, as well as young people who are here, who have come. As young students who will be tomorrow's journalists. The question is, most of you, one thing I see with journalists also is a lot of superficial knowledge. Usually they don't go seriously into topics. Do we have a serious journalist? I'm not criticizing you, but I'm telling you in India, there is no specific constitutional guarantee the freedom of the press. All of you know that. It is only indirectly covered by Article 19A in the chapter on fundamental rights protected under the citizen's right to freedom of speech and expression. It was in fact clarified by no less an authority than Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, chairman of the drafting committee, that the press or any other section of the society can claim to exercise no rights not open to a citizen of the republic. But such of the rights are now being enjoyed by the press as an institution with all necessary facilities for running a widespread network with a complex structure are a practice recognized and guaranteed by several judgments of the Supreme Court. So what might have been left unsaid in a statutory provisions is made good by judge-made law. So the other question I'm asking you, while we're looking at a continuity and change of how the media began during the freedom movement, which I thank the Indian Council for Historical Research as well as the IIMC in bringing about this exhibition, which is a beginning. And I think they will do all more as they go knowing more details of other parts of the country. This is an excellent initiative, and I congratulate you for the same, because filling up the gaps is extraordinarily important. As rightly said by the director, I, coming from the south of India, feel extremely marginalized in Delhi. Because I understand that speaking Hindi में बोलना हमें इतनी कठिन है, आप नहीं समझ सकते हैं। आप तमिल, तेलुगु, मलयालम या कन्नड़ा सीख लो, तब आपको मालूम पड़ेगा मुझे कितनी तकलीफ होती है। So I appeal to students, please don't use language as an ideology. It is a means of communication. आपको लोग के पास जाना है, समझना है. If you learn to speak their language, they will, talk to you much better. क्योंकि मुझे तेलुगु या तमिल में सोचना पड़ेगा, उसके बाद मैं इंग्लिश में अनुवाद करती हूँ, और उसके बाद हिंदी में. So please understand, आपको भी नहीं, आप एक भाषा सीख कर देखिए, और स्क्रिप्ट भी अलग है. We don't use the Devanagari script. So you have to appreciate when it's not your mother tongue, others speaking that language, because it means a great effort. So I appeal to all of you, please learn as many languages as you can. All Indian languages are very rich in their literature, all, including Hindi. To all of you know, Tamil is older than Sanskrit, and it is a classical language. So इसीलिए तमिलनाडु में बहुत रेजिस्टेंस होती है हिंदी सीखने के लिए, because बहुत कठिन है. आपका ग्रामर और आपका लिपि, और even we don't come from the Indo-Aryan school of languages. So that is also a major problem. So आपको समझना पड़ेगा. Only lastly, I just want to talk a little about what should be the responsibilities of the fourth estate, if at all you have any. Freedom brings responsibility. Don't become like JNU. So two expressions are very important: self-restraint and social purpose. And this is where I would say, one, it is absolutely essential for any journalist to check and cross-check any news item before it is published, so that it might not cause avoidable damage to any individual or institution and to its own credibility. This is something very, very important. You see the freedom movement, even if they were fighting for a cause, there was some ethics. And unless you maintain, Hindu had it till Kasturi. Now, okay, it's a different thing. People would would say even if somebody was killed before the Mahavishnu of Mount Road, it was called, they would not report it unless the police commissioner confirmed it. Today it's a different matter, but that is why the Hindu was so popular. The second is to exercise restraint in the expression of views in the editorials, special articles, and other features meant to throw light on a situation, not to cure the pitch for somebody or the other. Because media is very important. You can make or mar a career or even an incident. 3, political analysis has to be distinguished from personal calumny and mudslinging. 4, it is high time that Indian newspapers made a slight departure from their excessive preoccupation with the actions and utterances of political VIPs. There are quite a few problems affecting our society, impeding the pace of its march towards freedom, progress, equality, and modernization, which need more attention. They include, among others, popular superstition, religious bigotry, intellectual obscurantism, and social backwardness or reactions. These are some of the sum you can add to that. And lastly, I would only suggest need for a radical reconsideration of news value towards more positive direction of social relevance. Crime, disaster, and other kinds of sensation could be replaced by constructive enterprise and benevolent response. I once again thank IIMC and all of you for giving me this opportunity to come and express myself. And I once again would say I'm so happy that IIMC has started this reconsideration with ICHR of the media and its role in India's freedom struggle as well as modern India. Very essential part for us to have a holistic and an inclusive approach to our own history. Thank you once again. Namaskar. Vande.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chancellor, for this most informative and interesting address. I request Sri Ashish Goyal, Additional Director General, IIMC, to propose a vote of thanks. Sri Ashish Goyal is an officer of the Indian Information Services from the 1996 batch. He also heads the research unit of the PID. He has also served in various capacities with the Press Information Bureau and Bureau of Outreach Communication. He has also served on deputation in PGI Chandigarh. Sri Ashish Goyal.
Respected Professor Santi Panditji, Vice Chancellor, Jawaharlal University. Respected Professor Raghavendra Darbarji, Chairman, Indian Council of Historical Research. Our Director General, Professor Sanjay Trivedi, Seminar Convener, Professor Pramod, Professor Sangeeta, distinguished guests, delegates, HODs and faculty of IIMC, officer trainees of the Indian Information Service, students of IIMC, and my friends from the media fraternity. It is a matter of great honor and privilege for IIMC to be hosting this seminar on Indian media and the freedom movement at this historic juncture when the nation completes 75 years of its independence and, in the words of Honorable Prime Minister, embarks towards an era of Amrit Kaal in the next 25 years. As our DG rightly said, that in the next 25 years, we will not be able to blame the others for where we are. It is us, the young generation, which has to make this nation and achieve the India's vision for 2047. We are especially thankful to the Indian Council for Historical Research for sponsoring this national seminar and providing IIMC all the support for the same. We are thankful to ICHR for putting up this beautiful and informative exhibition on the theme of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, where the chairman tells me that they've tried to give a different perspective and, as repeated, that they've tried to fill the gaps, bring out the unsung heroes, the events which were largely ignored when we are talking of the India's freedom struggle. The objective of the seminar, Media and Indian Freedom Movement, is quite apt, especially in the current times, as the millennials, along with the so-called Generation Z, which comprise a sizable chunk of country's population, are largely unaware of the finer nuances of India's freedom struggle, and even lesser about the role of the Indian media in mobilizing the masses against the British rule. As it is often said, those who forget their history are condemned to repeat it, and it is the endeavor of this government to ensure that India does not forget its history and does not repeat the mistakes. It is in this endeavor that Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is being celebrated in the country all across. Just yesterday, the Honorable Minister of Information Broadcasting, they launched Azadi Ki Amrit Kahaniyan series in collaboration with Netflix. It's a series of short stories highlighting the role of present-day women in the last 75 years, those women who've done exceptional work. So Netflix is producing these short films which will be run on that platform in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance. Professor Tanwar rightly said that there are a lot of gaps and history is a matter of perception. Sir, thank you so much for such an eye-opening address, and it really goads us to dig deeper into the Indian history. I'm sure my friends here from the Indian Information Service will go beyond reading Bipin Chandra and take cues from the authors which you would be suggesting. Madam Vice Chancellor, thank you for being with us here, sparing your time and highlighting your views about the languages and the difficulties one faces in learning the other languages. Ma'am, now at least North Indians are well beyond that. When south of Bhopal, everything was Madrasi. So we've learned a little bit over a period of years, but definitely yes, we need to appreciate that the other parts of the countries also have their own difficulties in learning the other languages, and in our course of the Indian Information Service, we are trying to introduce some language courses so that they get a different perspective. So I'm sure, ma'am, we'll pick up from there. So in the end, thank you everybody for being with us in this seminar. I urge you to attend other sessions also. They are very interesting sessions, like Sir said, on proscribed media and other aspects which generally we don't get to read or hear. So please enjoy this 2-day stay here at IMC. And this is just the beginning of this activity. I'm sure we'll continue with this activity all year around. Thank you.
The next session shall begin immediately after this one. There will be a break of barely a few minutes.